it goes from verse 1 to 17. And it basically lists all the names from Abraham all the way to Jesus. But in verse 17, it says, I'll read verse 1. It says, the record of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then it goes on, Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac was the father of Jacob, Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers, and so on. And then, verse 17 it says, so all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. So we call that first period of Jesus' genealogy. First period of 14 generations. From David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations. So that's the second period of 14 generations. And from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations. Okay. And so this genealogy is organized into 14, 14, 14, three periods of 14 generations. And the book 3, the unquenchable lamp of the covenant, covers the first period of 14 generations. Book 4 covers the second period, and book 5 covers the third period. And so from book 3 to book 5 are basically the history of the generations that we can find in Matthew chapter 1. So today we're going to only do an introduction of this genealogy. And this Matthew chapter 1, as you all should know, or probably know, is the first passage in the New Testament. And up until John the Baptist came and started to preach, there was no prophet or teaching for about 400 years. After the Old Testament, after the last prophet Malachi. And so, for about 400 years, which is known as the period of darkness, people were either forgotten, people either forgot about this promise of the Messiah, or some were more thirsty and hungry for the word because there was no one really to. However, does anybody remember what happened 400 years ago in your genealogy? Or in this country? Or in this world? It's not easy to remember. It's not easy to pass down something for 400 years. So again, the light was dimming, the lamp was dimming. But the true light came, right? And then after that, Jesus came and Jesus lived on this earth, but he was accused as a heretic, accused as the wrong teacher. He was crucified, right? And then he resurrected and he ascended up to heaven. And the disciples received the Holy Spirit and the church era began, right? And Matthew, after that, Matthew started to write, and he was writing to the audience of the Jews. Apostle Paul was the apostle mainly for the Gentiles, right? But Matthew was writing to the Jews. Which one do you think must have been harder to do? Preach to the Gentiles or preaching to the Jews? I would think, because if I were to go and teach these well-known professors, for example, if they don't know me, or let's make it worse, if they think I'm a weird, strange teacher, for me to testify or convince them of something would be more difficult because they know better than I do of theology, of the Bible, or at least they think. In this context, Matthew is the one that is trying to testify to the Jews who killed Jesus about 50, 60, or 70 years ago. He's testifying to the Jews who killed Jesus, telling them the guy that you killed is actually the one that you are waiting for, the Messiah. How do you explain to these stubborn Jews or people that killed Jesus? And so, of course, by instruction of the Holy Spirit Matthew wrote. But then if I were to try to convince the Jews that killed Jesus that Jesus is the Messiah, I would not start with a genealogy, would you? I would not start with this is a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ the Messiah. As soon as you say that, they're offended. Jesus Christ the Messiah. Jesus the Messiah. But he's not the Messiah. We killed him because he's not the Messiah. But these 17 verses, how would those Jews back then have accepted or understood this genealogy? God is wiser than any human being, right? And so there must be a reason why God instructed Matthew to record this. Matthew recorded this gospel to testify to the Jews. He began his argument with a genealogy. To the Jews, especially to the Jews of that time, this genealogy had important messages. So the author Reverend Abel Park explained those meanings and revealed for the first time the mysteries contained in this genealogy. When we say first time, it's not that he taught about the genealogies for the first time, but it's applicable to us for the first time. Because we never really read the genealogies. The third, fourth, fifth books, I already explained that. So, what did the Jews of the time see in this genealogy? They saw that it is their own genealogy. Which tribe do you think were the most proud out of the 12 tribes that used to live back then?
Judah.
Tribe of Judah, of course, right? And this genealogy that Matthew wrote was the genealogy according to the tribe of Judah. And so genealogy is a compendium of history. It's a question of long redemption history with an emphasis on the beginning and the end. And starts with Abraham and ends with Jesus Christ. And in the beginning, it says the two names that they are most interested in. First, Jesus the Messiah, the son of Abraham. What does that mean to the Jews during that time? Jesus the Messiah, the son of Abraham. Who's the son of Abraham? What does it mean? Son of Abraham was Isaac. However, son of Abraham to the Israelites, Abraham was their father. And the son of Abraham was the covenanted son. The son who is promised. The promised son. And of course, they knew. Of course, Isaac was the physical son. But the son of Abraham means the son that was promised to Adam. The son that was promised to Israel. So it is the son promised. Basically, they're waiting for the promised son, the Messiah, and the woman's seed. Because of the lack of time, we will not get into all these Bible verses, but you can write them down as reference. The second thing that it says is Jesus the Messiah, the son of David. The two people to whom God made a promise about a significant son, Abraham and David. Abraham is the father of faith. Abraham is the father. Okay. So, son of Abraham means father's son. Father's son. Son of David to them was more important for the Jews during that time. Son of David meant the promised king. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 14, and all these verses, God promises David, you will have a son. And he had a son, he had many sons, but then Solomon was the heir, right? The one who inherited the kingship. the throne. But God said, this, your son that I'm promising you, will establish the throne forever. Solomon wasn't forever. God is prophesying, double prophesying, because initially, physically, he's promising about Solomon. But in the end, essentially, he is promising the Son, the one who is coming as the King, eternal King, Jesus Christ. So they knew there will come a king that will rule and reign over them forever, bring the eternal kingdom. They're waiting for that. That's why all the disciples kind of expected Jesus to overthrow and become a king. Remember, the two disciples came and with the mother, and mom said, Jesus, when you become the king, I want my sons to be the right-hand man and left-hand man. Right? Their expectation is for Jesus to overthrow the Roman regime and become the king. But he was the king of all kings. His kingdom is not on this earth. His kingdom is the heavenly one. So Matthew is telling them right off the bat, first verse, he's the son of Abraham and son of David. What do you think, if you were the Jews during that time, what do you think your reaction would be? The record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah. You're already offended. You call him Messiah, Messiah. And then, second, son of Abraham. Offended. Son of David. Even more offended. Why? Because Jesus came and said, hey, when Abraham saw me, he rejoiced. Right? You guys are not sons of Abraham. Jesus was offensive like that. And so, but this genealogy proves from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, and it follows. And this genealogy is something that you cannot deny because it's a real genealogy. And then it follows to Joseph, and they knew after Joseph was Jesus. So it makes them think about their genealogy once again. So who is he? And he is to be the eternal king. And so when he says Abraham, it comes from Abraham and David. Something special about that. That's Jesus. Abraham and David, in their eyes, are the two most important ancestors. And they were proud to be called son of Abraham and son of David. But Jesus was called both son of Abraham and son of David. And they knew he's the king, promised son. To David and Abraham, God promised two things. God promised to Abraham, son. You will have a son. You will be a father. Your descendants will be as many as the stars in the sky. So God promised Abraham a son and descendants. Second thing God promised Abraham was land. I'll give you this land, promised land. God allowed David to become a king over the people of God and over the land, country of Israel. And Jesus is the king and son. This promise fulfilled. And he came to this same land that God gave to Abraham and David. What is representative of that land is the temple. And they believed this temple stands upon the foundation of Abraham and David. Second Chronicles, chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Second Chronicles, chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. We'll read for you. 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David, at the place where David had prepared on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Do you get this? Moriah, or Temple of Solomon, was established on Mount Moriah. What happened on Mount Moriah? Isaac. It's the place where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. It's the place that became the foundation of faith. And then it says it's the same place where the Lord had appeared to his father David, at the place that David had prepared on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. What happened there? Remember David, before every time he went to war, he just trusted in God and asked God. But this time he counted the number of his soldiers. God was really, really not happy about that. And the threshing floor of Ornan is the place where he repented. So it is the same place. David did not know. Abraham did not know. When he was sacrificing Isaac, Abraham did not know that it was a place. So when we obey God, when God asks us for something, it's not because God does not have other ways to get that. It's not because God is bullying us. It's not because God is greedy that He's asking us for our sacrifice. But when I'm trying to fill this cup with gold, for example, what should I do with water inside? Throw away, right? So in order for God to give us something better, He needs to tell us to throw away what we have, right? Empty our cups. When Abraham was able to do it, then God not only gave him the blessing at that time or in his life, but He allowed that place, Abraham, to be remembered as the foundation of the temple, eternal temple, in the end. David did not know why God was telling him to repent at that side. But it was a place where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. David had to empty himself of his sins. And later, that is the place where Jesus was. And some theologians even say that's where Jesus is crucified. But it's the place where the temple stood. That temple foreshadows the eternal temple. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16, it says, we are the temple of God, our bodies. 1 Corinthians 6:19 tells us our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And we need to establish and set up our temple upon the foundation of Abraham's faith, his father's faith, and David, the king's repentance. So now, this kind of concept was not needed to be explained to the Jews during that time. They knew this. It was embedded in their DNA, in their understanding. So when he said, Father, Jesus, the son of Abraham and son of David, the two names come together, it's the temple. Jesus is the personification of the temple. Came from Abraham, came from David. Something's gotta be good when it comes from both Abraham and David. When they come together, a worship place, glory of God is revealed. And so when Matthew says, son of David and son of Abraham, Jesus is the fulfillment of the promise of the Son and promise of the Lamb, which is the eternal temple. So he's the eternal king over the eternal nation, or eternal kingdom. And he's the true son, who is the eternal temple. Second thing that the Jews would recognize is that this is a shameful genealogy. Did you look at the names in this genealogy? This history of redemption is the history of the redeemed ones. When you go to church, do you find saints only? Do your churches have only saints? Sinless people? History of redemption is the history of the sinners that are redeemed. So when they first come in, they're sinners. Churches should have sinners. Not that churches should sin, or church members should sin. Not that, I'm not saying that. In Korea or in Japan, there's bathhouses. Have you ever been? Anyway, it's a public bath. And the author of History of Redemption series used to say, when you go to that bathhouse, does the owner of the bathhouse expect clean people to come in? Or dirty people to come in? He said, church is like spiritual bathhouse. Expected dirty people will come in. Why? And when they go out, they need to be clean. They come in to be washed. Church is a place where sinners come in to be washed, to be forgiven, to find Christ, to find salvation. And that's what this genealogy is telling us. This mankind, sinful. And during that time, and even today, but during that time, the most representative sinful people were prostitutes, okay? Gentiles, outcasts and tax collectors, those people. The people that Jesus accepted as friends during his life on this earth. And this Matthew genealogy includes women, which is not proper in their culture. It's not traditional. These women were not just ordinary women, but they were Gentiles and or stained with harlotry. Now, if your genealogy, forgive me for saying this, if your genealogy is filled with former prostitutes and sinners and Gentiles, or people who are known as criminals, would you show off your genealogy? Hey, I'm a descendant of this prostitute and a criminal. This is genealogy of none other than the Messiah. Is Matthew out of his mind? He's trying to testify to the Israelites, to the Jews, that this Jesus that you killed is the Messiah, and he shows these women in the genealogy. What's going on? Wouldn't we want to edit and kind of blot out these names and replace them with some honorable people? Why didn't? But who are they? These women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. And we're going to think about, next time we meet, these three people who are included in the first period of Jesus' genealogy. And so this is a shameful genealogy, but then when these Jewish people look at these names, what are they going to say? These are our mothers. Shameful, but undeniably honorable women, without whom I would not exist today. If Tamar wasn't there, the tribe of Judah would not have continued on. If Rahab wasn't there, the Israelites would not have passed through Jericho. If Ruth wasn't there, Ruth is great-grandmother of David. Bathsheba, David's wife. Right? Solomon's mother. And then they're wondering, who is this Mary? But there is a pattern. These women who were accused of or were harlots or prostitutes. Mary was accused also, right, of being pregnant while she was engaged. So she was also accused for immorality. And they all along thought Jesus was an illegitimate child that should have been killed while he was in the womb. Now he was born and then he was a heretic. Their minds are still starting to think, wow, was Mary then also kind of like these other women? That means, who is Jesus? Big question. And then, in the end, it says, 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. How can it be so clean and neat? Is it really 42 generations? They knew. They are really good at calculation. They are really good at years. Abraham was born in 2166 BC. Jesus was born in 4 BC. So it was 2162 years of history divided by how do you do this? Just do this. Divided by 42 years. How many years is that in average? 82, 83 years in average? Or 50 something years in average? Anyway, it's too little generations for such a long period. They knew it was fabricated. They knew it was not. It does not include all the generations. Some generations had to be taken out just to make it 14 plus 14 plus 14. Why? If you're going to fabricate a genealogy like that, why not take away the unclean women? So the question is, who are taken out? Who are omitted? And that's another thing that we are going to think about next time. And 14 plus 14 plus 14. And these smart people, or people who are very curious, would go through and count all the names. Has anybody done that? Very kiasu people. Make sure the Bible is right. 14 plus 14 plus 14 should be 42 generations. You count all the names. Do this when you're not so sleepy, or when you go home and if you have insomnia, you cannot fall asleep. Start counting those names. You get so excited that you still won't be able to sleep. Why? Because you'll find out there will be only 41 names. Even a greater problem. Now, is the Bible wrong? Matthew clearly said 42. 14 plus 14 plus 14 is 42, right? But then, 41 names. What's going on? Just in case you're not thinking about coming next time, I will cover this next time. I have to leave the But number 42 was very special to the Israelites. 42. What does 42? Does it ring a bell in your mind? 42. We studied about the campsites in the wilderness, right? 42 campsites. Does that have anything to do with that? I don't know. From the fall to salvation, right? To the promised Son. 42 generations, right? From Egypt to the promised land. 42 campsites. So 42 must be something special. Out of the 42 campsites, 41 was in the wilderness, and the final one, was in Gilgal, which was in the promised land. So can this be also 41 plus 1? And what is that 1? Who's that 1? Basically gives the answer. Right? 42 is also important to them because it's 14 plus 14 plus 14. The first 14 is from Abraham to David. And this is a rise, prosperity. From Abraham to David, all these generations are really going up, and especially David here. The reason why it's 41 is because David is counted twice. David before and David after. Okay? David's life is cut into two, and basically before Bathsheba and after Bathsheba kind of thing, right? So from Abraham to David, prosperous, growing. But from David, second part of David to deportation to Babylon, it was a downslope. From Babylon back to Jesus is upslope again. Rise, decline, and rise. Kind of like the moon, 14 days of waiting, 14 days, and then full moon, 14 days of waxing, no moon, and then 14 days of waning. Is it waning and waxing? I'm confused. Waning, either way. So the 14 is very important. Also because 14 is 7 plus 7 or 7 times 2. Okay? 7 is a very important number for them. 2 is a number of testimony, confirmation. And finally 14 is the number of David. The Hebrew letters have numerical values. And it's called Gematria. Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav. This is Hebrew alphabet, written right to left. Aleph has a numerical value of 1. Bet has a numerical value of 2. Gimel, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? The Aleph is like A, or empty consonant. Bet is like B. Gimel is like G. Dalet is like D. He is like H. Vav is like V. Okay? Or W. So how do you write David? This is only consonants. Okay? And vowels are not counted. Only consonants have. So David has, also in Hebrew, David. Okay? David or David. Consonants are D, B, D, right? And so in Hebrew, David is written D, Dalet, B, right? Vav, and then Dalet, David. Okay, these are the vowels. David. What's the numerical value of this David? 4, right? 4 plus 6 plus 4 equals 14. Number of the king. It's a royal genealogy, they realize. Wow, this is a royal genealogy, and it is covered with 14, the concept of 14. So number is 14, 14, 14, meaning it's royal, like David, right? David, the name David is repeated twice. David, right? And even before Abraham lived before David, but it says the son of David first, and then son of Abraham. Emphasis on the king, royalty of this genealogy. And so in the end, the emphasis is this one, this 42. This one is like the promised land. He's the one. He's the promised son. Concept is the promised king, the promised son. And now this is a genealogy of David. Covered with the concept of David is the king. He's the eternal king that is promised. So this Matthew genealogy, if you decode it, if you read it and look at it from the Jewish perspective, Matthew is telling the Israelites, you just made a mistake because you crucified your own eternal king that was promised. But if you repent, just like David, that repentance will become the foundation upon which God will really establish that eternal kingdom. That is the message. Amen. So let us pray that we will also be established upon the faith of Abraham and the repentance of David. That means we need to follow the faith of Abraham. We need to follow the repentance of David. Amen. And let us pray and we'll finish.